Hello students, and welcome to lecture video number 5 on chapter 8, which is about the Progressive Era. We're continuing talking about acts that were passed while Roosevelt was president, and the next one that we're coming to is the Pure Food and Drug Act. This banned the shipment of impure foods and mislabeling of food and drugs. This was a problem during this time, as we've seen from the book by the muckraker Upton Sinclair in his book The Jungle, which we will either have already read or will read in class. Teddy Roosevelt was a progressive, and as such, he also wanted to help the environment. So he became friends and admired a guy named John Muir, which was a leading naturalist. He wrote about nature and conservation, how we need to protect what we have. While Teddy Roosevelt was president, he closed off over 100 million acres of forest land and made it protected so that it couldn't be mined, the forest couldn't be cut, it couldn't be developed, and protected this nature land that he said was disappearing because of industrialization. We also had the National Reclamation Act passed during this time. It said the federal government can decide where and when water is distributed. And the point is that the government began to notice that industrialization was hurting the environment and took steps to protect nature and to help the environment. Now, when Roosevelt left office, he basically handpicked William Howard Taft to be the next president. Teddy Roosevelt was very popular, so whoever he campaigned for had stood a good chance of winning. So he campaigned for William Howard Taft because he thought that William Howard Taft would follow the progressive policies that he had started while he was president. However, Taft did not do this. He started differing from Roosevelt and doing things Roosevelt didn't like. So therefore, Teddy Roosevelt, in retaliation, began touring the country and promoting a new plan for America that he called New Nationalism. Now, the main goal of this was to restore the government's trust-busting power because Teddy Roosevelt thought that the monopolies and the illegal trust in this country were hurting the consumer and needed to be stopped. So what we have in the 1912 election is 3 people running for president. The Republicans refused to let Teddy Roosevelt run for them, and they chose William Howard Taft. The Democrats chose Woodrow Wilson, and Teddy Roosevelt split the Republican Party, started his own party called the Progressive Party, which was nicknamed the Bull Moose Party, and split the Republican vote, and basically handing the victory to Woodrow Wilson, the Democrat. Now, why was the Progressive Party called the Bull Moose Party? Well, because during the campaign, a reporter asked Teddy Roosevelt, and Mr. Roosevelt, you are getting older now, you've got some age on you, how do you feel as you go through this campaign? And his answer was, my friend, I feel as fit as a bull moose. So the Progressive Party was nicknamed the Bull Moose Party. Now, when Wilson became president, he had a plan for America that he called the New Freedom. And the main goal of this was to place strict controls on corporations because Woodrow Wilson himself was also a progressive and wanted to stop the big businesses from hurting the common man. One of the progressive amendments passed during this time is the 16th Amendment, making the income tax constitutional. The income tax is a tax made on income, so the more money you make, the more that you pay in taxes. This was a progressive idea, saying the progressives said the rich weren't doing their fair share, so we started to tax their income, and the income tax is still with us today because of the 16th Amendment. Also, we passed the Federal Reserve Act in 1913. It placed national banks under the control of a Federal Reserve Board, and during this chapter, you're going to watch a video on how the Federal Reserve System works. It basically changed our money from being backed by gold or being backed by silver, and it's basically regulated by the Federal Reserve, which decides the value of the money, and it is not anymore pegged to the value of gold. They also established the Federal Trade Commission, commonly known as the FTC. They basically looked at big businesses and made sure that they didn't become monopolies. And a similar law was the Clayton Antitrust Act of 1914, which strengthened earlier antitrust laws and made it harder for companies to form monopolies. Also, workers' comp, as it's known today, or the Working Man's Compensation Act, was passed in 1916, giving wages to temporarily disabled government workers. Now, again, these are all progressive ideas. These are things that the progressives wanted government to do to try to help society. Now, what is the legacy of progressivism? First of all, number one, for the first time in American history, the federal government began to help people in their private, personal lives. They did things such as workers' compensation, checking food and drugs, checking medicine, child labor laws. These were things that they hadn't done before. Number two, there was more regulation of businesses. There were more laws and things put into place to make sure that businesses didn't form monopolies and hurt the consumer or hurt the working man. And number three, there was more regulation of the environment. For example, Teddy Roosevelt closed off about 100 million acres of forest land so that he could preserve nature. So this is the legacy of progressivism and the progressive era, and I thank you for watching.